Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of my top 100 favorite cards. Yes, we're back at it. We are on the other half of the list and it's time to get started with number 50. Number 50 is Lingering Souls, one of the highlights of Dark Ascension. Now, when Dark Ascension came out, Innistrad, clearly came before it as it was part of Innistrad Block, and Innistrad was a monster, huge, crazy success. Innistrad is lauded as one of the best sets, best blocks of all time, certainly one of the best draft environments of all time. So Dark Ascension couldn't really live up to it, let's face it. Now, there was some disappointment in a lot of the cards themselves, but Lingering Souls was a hit, stayed a hit, has been insane, still sees play in Modern, has seen play in Cube from the day it was printed. It is value on top of value. It is 4 evasive creatures on top of 1 spell. It's across 2 colors, but it's cheaper the second time. There's nothing but good stuff about this one. It is not quite Spectral Procession in terms of 3 dudes seriously for your 3 mana, but when you get 3 mana for 2 and then 2 more mana for 2 more, that is a deal that you just can't pass up, and it is my 50th favorite card. Now, number 49 is Earls Disc. Now, Earl is Larry Niven backwards. It is the name of the science fiction author who actually created the term mana for power that comes from the land. And in his book, there was a warlock that had this spinning disc, and depending on how much mana was in the land, it would spin faster and soak up that mana, or it would stop functioning altogether. So the designers created Earls Disc as an idea that this thing is able to kind of soak up mana and then explode. So we have a really cool story behind a card that was incredibly influential. Now, when I first started playing Magic around Ice Age, Earls Disc was there. It had been there since Alpha. It was a sort of a mainstay reset point, and it was a card that, of course, later with the different card types, it started to get worse because then all of a sudden it wouldn't destroy Planeswalkers. But it was also a card that was just really ubiquitous. For 4 mana and then an extra mana, any color could reset the board, and of course it could also destroy enchantments, which it led to using in Necropotence. So Necropotence could not only destroy Necropotence so it could start drawing cards again every turn, but could also wipe the board of any problems that you may or may not have had. So it's so efficient, it's hard to deny its use in Cube and casual decks because the rate is really fantastic. Wizards has printed it a whole bunch of times for a reason, and it's one of those cards that is just incredibly evocative. It's got a great story behind it. It's one of Magic's first cards ever, and I love it. Earls Disc. Number 48 are the Fetchlands. Now, fetch as fetch does, Wizards made fetch happen. Yep, I went there. It's okay. Polluted Delta and Friends are just some of the greatest Magic cards ever played. Now, Brainstorm nowadays looks like something that you could ban in Legacy. Now, they're not going to because there's this gentleman's agreement that you can't ever have Legacy without Brainstorm, but before Fetchlands, Brainstorm was just kind of okay. There were different ways you could make your library get shuffled, such as with Thawing Glaciers, where people were trying to take advantage of that. But the Fetchlands in particular just took Brainstorm to a whole new level that it had never been before. So thanks to these lands, we now have a lot of what they would describe as loading screens. The idea that you have to do something and then do a thing with your deck and shuffle and shuffle and shuffle and shuffle. You're not playing Magic at that point. You're just waiting for somebody to finish shuffling, which is kind of frustrating in and of itself. So the fetch lands are good. Now there's common fetch lands like Evolving Wilds, which, of course, see plenty of play because they go and find the lands that you need. And so that's what these cards did sort of for the first time. And Wizards had tried something like them before in Mirage, where they entered the battlefield tapped, and then you had to use them again, and the land they found come into play. But it's just too slow. The ability to pay 1 life for these things was incredibly exciting when they first came out. And of course, when the enemy fetches came out in Zendikar, everyone just lost their freaking mind, and for good reason. So I'm really hoping, obviously, for reprints, because just for budget-wise, these cards are incredibly expensive to own, and I love the fact that they're making really cool editions of them. So we do have the Expedition versions of these, and I expect to see more special editions of the Fetchlands moving forward, because it's not something I don't think a lot of people want back in Standard, but they did bring them back in Cons, and the world didn't end. So it was fun to kind of have that experience, be able to play with them. Then they made dual lands that had basic land types. So these cards are always exciting, always super sweet. Fetchlands are awesome. Number 47 is Thoughtseize. Now, Thoughtseize showed up in Lorwyn, and there's a few times in my life, particularly as a Magic player, where I'm able to kind of go back, I'm able to look, and I'm able to say, look, there was this part in time where I believed X, Now, I believe why. Everything changed thanks to a single minuscule interaction. Now, I won a contest back in 2007 or 2006 for the 2007 Invitational. So I got to go to the 2000 Invitational as the storyteller vote, which was awesome. And thanks for those who are still watching me to this day. And as a result of that, I got to go to the Pro Tour in Valencia. And that was the only Pro Tour that ever had its day one canceled. Even when there was a blizzard in New York, they had the Pro Tour. But a foot plus of water was inside the hall. You can go back and watch the Magic Show. I think it was number 66 or 67, where I detail that. I've got interviews. I've got footage of it. It was, back when I was using a lot of licensed music and didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I was having a lot of fun. And anyway, there was the first time I actually got to interact with pro Magic players. And I got to interact with R&D for the first time. I got to sit down and talk to those guys, the people who make Magic. I'd only read their articles and I could interact with them as much as I could, either whether it was through forums. There wasn't a lot of social media going on back then. But either way, I sat down against a developer and I was just like, look, man, Thoughtseize is so ubiquitous. It's just incredible. It's in every black deck. Every black deck wants it, and yet it's rare. It was at that point probably getting around to, maybe $15 or maybe even higher. And it was like, look, that's too much. You're charging too much for this thing that should be less rare. And they just looked at me and he said, Evan, it's the best card in the set. And I was like, wait a minute. And it was like, the idea that Magic, clearly has some business goals behind it was just something as a player. At that point, I was just in love with the game and the culture and the things that it did for me and the happiness that it brought me. And I wasn't really thinking so much about the company and the things it has to do and the way that it has to make Magic in order to make money. I mean, the reason that Mythics show up, the reason that we're always going to have these, expedition, inventions, the masterpiece type rarity. It's just another rarity because Wizards likes to make money, and they make money by making some of the best cards hard to find. And so that was a real sort of watershed moment for me where I was like, oh, I need to take a step back and realize, in the grand scheme of things, sometimes it's important to have cards like this to be rare so people get excited to own them, to collect them, to have things that open in packs that are always going to be good. I mean, this card is nuts. When it came out in Theros, it was still pretty much the best card in Standard, just like it was in Lorwyn. The ability to answer any card, to make your opponent essentially mulligan to 6, and mulligan to 6 in the way that you want them to, in exchange for a mana and 2 life, is always a good deal. One of the best cards ever. I really don't expect to see it back in Standard. I would certainly expect them to reprint it in things like Modern Master Sets or what have you, just so they can get more copies out there. But when this thing's in Standard, it just completely wrecks the metagame, and everything sort of revolves around, do I Thoughtseize away their Thoughtseize, or do I, crack fetch and basically go down to 15 on turn 1 in order to get there? And most of the time you do, because the effect is insane. Thoughtseize is amazing. 46 is Noble Hierarch. Now, Noble Hierarch showed up in Conflux, and Conflux is also famous for this other sort of 1-mana spell that may or not be one of the most defining Magic cards of all time, but it's fine, it's whatever. Noble Hierarch was kind of an answer to the fact that Birds of Paradise just could not be in Standard. It got to the point where everyone kind of realized, just like they did later with Llanowar Elves, or Elvish Mystic, if you will, that a 1-mana producer is just often way too good, and Noble Hierarch by herself is just kind of silly. An 0/1 that can be a 1/2 when she's attacking. She makes 3 different types of mana. She's a 1-mana dork, as it were. Good early, good late. Multiples are fantastic, so there's just no downside to how awesome Noble Hierarch is, and immediately, kind of drove the Bant deck and any deck that had green in it for the next 2 years as soon as it saw print, or I guess a year and a half, depending on how the sets worked out. But either way, Noble Hierarch is a fantastic Magic card, one of the best green creatures ever. She makes all the right colors of mana. I love that Exalted stacks. Exalted is a fantastic mechanic because it encourages you to attack and it makes sure that new players sort of know what to do. And this card is just going to see play forever, whether it's cubes, whether it's commanders, whether it's casuals. Noble Hierarch is always value, and I just love the crap out of it. Number 45 is Progenesis. Protection from everything. That's the moniker. That's the thing. That's one of those things like Mark Rosewater doesn't do it a lot anymore, but he used to do things like, we're going to make a creature that says something that no one has ever said before, that no other creature has ever had this text before. And protection from everything is just one of those phrases that is just so beautiful. It's just 3 words, and yet it says so much. No matter what you want to do, it has protection from it. Can you target it? Nope. Can you do a thing? Nope. Is it going to get damaged by the spurn spell? Nope. It does not matter. It has protection from all the things all the time. And yes, I think new players are still kind of going to get, confused by the fact that Wrath of God is still able to destroy things like that. But regardless, protection from all the things is always exciting. The mana cost is totally sweet. 10 mana symbols, 10 of all the different mana symbols is fantastic. The 10-10 itself, big, huge numbers, super cool, amazing image. One of the most evocative and powerful cards. It saw a lot of play. Now, I think there's a lot more sort of better options that came along later, but for a long, long time, when people were trying to search up, whether it's Cube, whether it's even in Legacy, some of the most powerful creatures you could go get, Progenesis was at the top. This card is sweet and will forever remain a cornerstone in Magic history. Number 44 is Aether Vial. Now, Aether Vial was a card that didn't really start out being that impressive. I don't think a lot of people kind of got on that train. What I recall is V. Mauschwitz, the one and only Hall of Famer, one of the best deck builders and players of all time, was like, this card is nuts. This card is busted. You get to get around every single mana cost of your creatures, no matter how many colors it is. Like, it doesn't matter if you have that color of mana. Aether Vial gets around counter spells. Is able to do that at instant speed at the end of their turn. You're able to manipulate the counters themselves because they're charge counters. And I mean, I think when you look at it, when you look at the dark steel printing of the card itself, like it's not amazing artwork. Let's be honest. I mean, Greg Hildebrandt, you know what I'm saying? Like you did a fine job, but this isn't, what I would describe as anyone's kind of best work. It's just kind of a guy looking at a thing, but whatever. And it turns out to be an incredibly expensive card. Like, at this point, this card is like $26 to $27 as of this recording, and that's just a good old-fashioned dark steel uncommon. So that's how good Aether Vial is. It is a 4 of. When you want to play it, you want to play it as a complete playset, because getting this thing on turn 1 is just amazing. It is the hottest of fire, and it took a while for people to get there, but nowadays it's universally recognized as one of the most overpowered 1-mana artifacts that has ever been printed. It gets around all the restrictions that a creature normally has, whether it's casting restrictions or whether it's color restrictions or mana restrictions. Aether Vial is great, will always be high up on the power curve. We'll probably see play for as long as old school or powerful Legacy and even, I guess, maybe some vintage decks are able to play this type of card. But it doesn't matter. I love this thing in Cube. It is amazing in Merfolk. It does what you need it to do. Aether Vial is great, and it is currently, as I'm recording this, a Kaladesh invention with a fantastically gorgeous version of it. Number 43 is Wrath of God. And so Wrath of God is a card that when Magic first came out and when Magic was young, as it were, a lot of people didn't necessarily like it. It did take some time. It took a little bit of coaxing for people to recognize that Wrath of God is fantastic. It is good when things aren't even. And a lot of players see Magic as like, well, I do a thing, you do a thing, I do a thing, you do a thing. Trying to break that parity is sometimes hard to wrap your head around. And Wrath of God is also one of those cards that kind of got like Wizards in, I wouldn't say in trouble, but it caused controversy that wasn't really necessary. So, it saw play throughout Magic's history. Let's see, it was in 4th, it was in 5th, it was in 6th, it was in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and then ... So after 10th edition, there was no more Wrath of God. There was Day of Judgment, because Day of Judgment gets around that magical G word, and then they kind of made Gods and Theros. So that's a thing. But Day of Judgment also removes the regeneration clause, which Wizards has gotten away from regeneration anyway, because regeneration isn't really a good ability. Wrath of God will forever go down as one of the most powerful and useful Magic cards, whether it's in a different form, whether it's in like a Fumigate or a Katar's Wrath or whatever. It doesn't matter how they try to rename it Day of Judgment. Wrath of God is Wrath of God. And any old school player, like, yes, they've kind of beaten out Type 2 and now we call it Standard, but it's hard to say that whenever a new card comes out that is white or white based and destroys all creatures, that you can't call it a Wrath of God, and it will forever be one of the most awesome white cards ever. Number 42 is Eternal Witness. Man, let me tell you, when I came to Magic, regrowth was banned. It was restricted in Vintage, and it was just banned, period, in any other type of format, because that is nuts. 1 green, 1 generic mana for any card in your graveyard back to your hand, even if it starts for speed. You crazy. That's just way too good of an ability. And then all of a sudden, on a 2-1, on a 3-mana 2-1, here comes Eternal Witness. What? Card was amazing, was great from the moment it saw print, was super exciting, was just an uncommon. Like, it was only an uncommon. Like I couldn't believe it wasn't rare. Like, it was crazy. And it showed up in 5th Dawn. Everybody and mama wanted to play with it. And there was also this other card called Plow Under, and Plow Under made you want to, we've talked about it, made you want to hurt things. And Eternal Witness plus Plow Under meant amazing things. So Eternal Witness is just not that combo. It's not just that combo. It's a creature for all time. It's always good. It's almost like it may be on turn 3 when there's nothing in your graveyard. Congratulations, you found a way for Eternal Witness to be bad. But every other scenario, it's amazing. Whether you're chaining Eternal Witnesses, whether you're getting back your best card, like you're just able to put it on a stick and you're able to bounce it. You're able to, manipulate Eternal Witness to do kind of what you want her to do. Oh man, there is no end to how sweet Eternal Witness can be. Her ability to go into like combo decks, for example, or the ability to really, work off different types of combinations. Eternal Witness is good coming, going, leaving. One of the best cards ever. I absolutely love Eternal Witness. It's hard to say too many good things about her because she's so good. 41 is Ninja of the Deep Hours. Man, Betrayers of Kamigawa. I was just so in love with Magic when that set came out. I know, I get it. It was post-Affinity, and it was super underpowered, and whatever. It doesn't matter. I was starting to play good Magic. I was okay when I was a kid, and then I stopped playing Magic, and I came back, and I kind of found Magic as an adult, and I really started to see the beauty of it, and I was just running hot in a lot of the tournaments I was playing, and so when Betrayers came out, man, it had ninjas. It has 8 cards in it. It has 8 ninja cards in it that are ninjas. Like, that those 8 cards define that whole set. That's how crazy sweet ninjas are. And we've never gotten ninjas since, except Commander products or whatever. It's like, Wizards, you gotta bring back the ninjas, man. Oh, who doesn't love ninjas? And Ninja of the Deep Hours was just good from the moment it saw print, man. Like, it was unbelievable in draft. It was super sweet in standard. I got to play this thing in queue basically forever. I love the crap out of this card. It does what you want it to do. It's cool. It's sneaky. It's weird. You can kind of bounce it and manipulate it the way you want. Woo! Ninja of the Deep Hours lets you draw cards and deal damage. That's just so good. And it lets you have that kind of fun surprise factor. There was like a Plax Manta deck or whatever in standard. There was this like blue-green weird ninjutsu deck that was sweet. Ninjutsu itself, not the greatest mechanic in the world, but it was kind of a cool sort of a gotcha thing. And Ninja of the Deep Hours is just, it just feels like Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden on the NES, like on a Magic card. And that's amazing. So you're able to take my NES love for Ninja Gaiden, and did you ever play the arcade version? Because it's really messed up. But Ninja Gaiden on the NES, you have Magic over here, you got your chocolate plus your peanut butter with your ninjas, and I love ninjas, and Ninja of the Deep Hours is just so, it's so good. I love Ninja of the Deep Hours. It is definitely in my top 50. In fact, my number 41 card, and that brings us to the end of our 6th edition of this countdown. I want to thank you guys very much for hanging out with me and talking about my favorite cards. We've got 4 more to go. We've got the big 4-0, the 40 greatest, in my opinion, Magic cards of all time. Yes, woo! It's going to be awesome. I hope you guys join me there for that. So if you like this and you want to see more, subscribe. If you also like it, you can tell me what you think about it in the comments. You can hit the like button. That tells people that I exist and stuff. Until next time, Magic players, where we continue our top 100 Magic cards of all time, this is Evan Irwin, tapping the cards so you don't have to.